John chapter 13. We're going to stay there actually. John 12. That's what we were last week. We're going to pull that up and take a look again. But while you're looking that up, I'll bring some morning humor for you and let you get ready. Hope you got your thinking caps on for this one. So Grandpa was sitting in his study quietly when his grandson walks in with his brand new harmonica in his hand. And he says, "Grandpa, can I practice my harmonica in here?" And Grandpa says, "Well, of course you can. I love music. In fact, music saved my life one day." His grandson said, "What? What do you mean, Grandpa?" He said, "Well, it happened like this. Your grandma and I used to live in this little town called Johnstown, and it's famous for this flood it had. One day the dam broke upstream, the water came rushing down, and it came right through our town. When it hit our house, it knocked it completely off the foundation." And he says, "Oh, Grandpa, it's terrible. What happened?" And well, the house started floating downstream. Grandma got up on the coffee on the dining table, and she floated away safely. "Well, what happened to you, Grandpa?" He says, "Well, I accompanied her on the piano." Notice about half the room had to turn to somebody and explain that one. Okay. Yeah, just a little. All right, John chapter 12, and we're going to get right into our reading down in about verse 27 or something. Let me tell you where we were and kind of set up this just a little bit. Last week we talked about the story where the woman, Mary, came in and anointed Jesus' feet with a very expensive perfume and then dried it off with her hair. And we were looking at it, and as you kind of scan down through the chapter, you notice that the story of Jesus continues, and it's the story of him riding into Jerusalem on a donkey. It's a story we revisit every Palm Sunday. And then next, about verse 20, there's a story there where some men from Greece come, and they've heard about Jesus. They're there for the Passover feast, but while they're there, they want to make sure they meet Jesus. Must have heard stories, and they wanted to meet him. Jesus agrees and gives them an interesting answer. In verse 23, he says that when they want to meet him, he says, "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls to the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit." Of course, he's giving kind of a foreshadowing of his death to come on the cross. But that's also an interesting verse, and I didn't know this, so if you kind of like to have little nuances of the scriptures, Mark was sharing this with me last week, that this verse kind of denotes the middle of this book. The first half of the book was all about his miracles and his ministry, and now the rest of the book is all leading up to the crucifixion and the resurrection, and then our salvation in Christ. In fact, you remember when Mark was teaching about the wedding feast, and when he changed water into wine, when his mother came and asked him to help, Jesus' reply was, "My hour has not yet come." But now he's saying, it's time. And that really sets up this next portion as Jesus is recognizing that his hour has come, it is time, and it's very significant to what's going on. So we're going to pick it up there in verse 27. Jesus is now less than a week from the agony of the cross. Remember last week I kind of asked a question, and without a great answer, how much did Jesus really know? How much did he know about what was going to happen or what was happening in people's lives? It seems like he has a lot of supernatural insider information, if you will. Other times he seemed to not really act upon that, or he didn't do anything there that way. But it's clear that he knows that the cross is before him. And he's beginning to lay that out. He's beginning to tell them what's going to happen and what's taking place. And then the humanness, in the beginning of this, the humanness of Jesus begins to emerge as he knows the cross is a week ahead. Have you ever had something in your life that you dreaded? You knew you had to do it. You knew you had to deal with it. You knew it was coming. And it's almost like the more you think about it, the worse it gets. Sometimes you just want to get something over with just so you can move on. And that's where Jesus is at. I mean, he knows what's coming, and he's not real thrilled about it at this point. He knows the sacrifice. He knows the torment he's going to go through. He knows what's going to happen. And that human side is coming out, and he's kind of dealing with that. So beginning in verse 27, it says, "Now is my soul troubled." I just explained why. "And what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour? But for this purpose I have come to this hour." And here Jesus kind of setting up his resolve. He knows he's going to march towards that cross. "Father, glorify your name." Then a voice came from heaven, "I have glorified it, and I will glorify it again." The crowd that stood there and heard it said that it had thundered. Others said, "An angel has spoken to him." But Jesus answered, "This voice has come for your sake, not mine. Now is the judgment of this world. Now will the ruler of this world be cast out. And I, when I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all people to myself." He said this to show by what kind of death he was going to die. And so the crowd answered him, "We have heard from the law that the Christ remains forever. How can you say that the Son of Man will be lifted up? Who is the Son of Man?" So Jesus said to them, "The light is among you for a little while longer. Walk while you have the light, lest darkness overtake you. The one who walks in darkness does not know where he is going. While you have the light, believe in the light, that you may become sons of light." So let's unpack this just a little bit. Some things are going on here. There's a couple things that I think we could take note of. First of all, this interaction when God speaks from heaven is kind of interesting. Jesus said it was for their benefit. The people that were there and heard him, or heard something. They didn't know what it was at first, and some thought it sounded like a thunder that had come out. But he said it was happening to get people's attention, to point people again towards Jesus. All that he said and all that he did, everything was pointing to why he came as the Messiah. It paves the way for Jesus' announcement that the judgment of the world was upon them. And Jesus is talking about the cross. He's pointing to the cross. Again, he's kind of setting up a prophecy. He's saying, I'm going to die on the cross. So that when it did happen, it would be another thing, another time, another instance that pointed to who Jesus really was. And Jesus is talking about that, and this next statement is that he would be lifted up from the earth. And the word here, lifting up means, kind of like in our language, it can mean to bring praise and honor. But when he adds the phrase from the earth, he is clearly pointing towards his death and his death on the cross. And apparently everybody understood what he was talking about. Verse 33, the phrase, he phrased it this way so the crowd would know that by what kind of death he was going to die, and they understood. It probably doesn't make a lot of sense to us, other than the fact we know what happens. But to them, they knew what he was talking about. And so here Jesus is talking about how he's going to the cross, but he said also that this was an event that would judge the world. Jesus is saying God is going to use this event to judge the world. Or in other words, God would judge the world based upon how they treat his son. And let that sink in for just a minute, because we know how the world treated his son. And if we consider that God is going to judge the world based upon that, we're in trouble. In fact, I was thinking back, there was time years ago when I was still doing youth ministry. We had this big event, a bunch of teenagers were kind of running around, and we were eating and just kind of goofing around. And our I think both our boys were with us, and they were really small then. And some of the teenage boys that were there got a little rowdy. They decided it'd be fun to start picking on one of my kids. And they were teasing them, and they were hiding things and playing a little keep away. And then one of them thought it'd be really funny if he came up and pantsed him. I wasn't happy. Right? Yeah, exactly. failed to see the humor. The protective dad came out, and I think the next few moments, I don't really remember them. I think I went kind of blank at that point. But I know we had a talk, and it kind of straightened things out. And any parent knows what it would be like to protect your child. Protect your child from the evils of the world, the harm, or just even going through a difficult time. It's just so natural for us to want in and kind of rescue them or protect them or provide that umbrella or that covering. And so here, God is going to use the event of the cross to judge the value, the worth of the world. Jesus came with love, with hope, with kindness. That's all he ever showed. He only lived to serve others, to help them, to heal the sick, and to make the blind to see and the lame to walk again. He healed them of disease and all forms of malady. He did not seek any honor for himself, but he lived his life as a humble servant to the world, with nothing at the end of his life for himself. He owned no property. He took no money. And for all of his goodness, the world nailed him to a cross. And God looked down upon that event to judge what we thought about his son. When my son was teased, all I wanted to do was take that kid and stretch his bottom lip over the back of his head. And look what we did to the Son of God. And we're a part of that. We're in that same system. We're in the family of humanity that have made our own mistakes and our own abuses towards God. But even in this, the glorious news is that God had a plan. Not only did this event judge the world, but this act of the cross defeated Satan. And you look down at verse 32, it talks about how the ruler of this world would also be judged. And so in an almost unfathomable way, the very event that should lead to our destruction was the very event that leads to our salvation instead. Jesus in verse 32 says, "When I am lifted up, I will draw all people to me." You see that those that put Jesus on the cross did so to end his ministry, to end from people following him. But this very event is the thing that would define our salvation instead. Instead of ending his ministry, it takes everything to a whole new place. His sacrifice became our forgiveness. And what we learn is that God's judgment on the world is not to destroy it, but his judgment was necessary so that he could then save it. And that's what he offers to us. So I ask you, church, how could we ever stop praising our Lord Jesus Christ for what we deserve, but what we get instead? The judgment that belongs upon our heads is instead our salvation and forgiveness. That Jesus Christ would take the place of punishment for us, that we could be restored with God. There's different ways to look at that, to explain this. I want to have a little fun with one this morning. I found a little thing, and I had not seen this one, so this is my first time sharing it. So we'll see. Hopefully I share it right. But just a little explanation of what's going on here in a simple way that we can understand it. And so I'm going to have to bring these pictures out kind of in the right way. And so I had to bring up my imaginary clicker to make this happen and get some help. But these are napkin evangelism, if you will, napkin theology. This is something that you could do anytime you're trying to sit with somebody and share a little bit about your faith. you could get a napkin, a piece of little napkin and a pencil, and draw this out real quick and explain the gospel message. Okay, so let's go to this one first. This one you've seen a lot probably before, has been around for a long time. Just to explain how, just to say that we're separated as people. We're separated from God because of sin, but the cross of Jesus Christ has bridged and spanned that gap that we could be restored with God. So that was not a new one, but this one's a little bit of a new one. And let's go ahead. And so go down one. So they're in the right order. There we go. Okay. What we understand is in the beginning was God. And he's represented with a halo because we know God is good and God is holy. And we revere, we love God for who he is. But as he's in his holiness, what we find, we read weeks ago now, back in John 3:16, why don't you say the first part of it with me? For God so loved the world. What we understand is that God, click that down, is for us. God is for us. He loves all people. God is for white people. He is. God is for black people. God is for Republicans and Democrats. God is for poor people. God is for rich people. God is for all people. And we are that he loves and wants to be united with. Go down one. The problem is that we don't always understand that or know that. We know and have fallen into a state of sin, and so you notice that God is represented with the halo because of his holiness, but we're in our humanity. Click that one more time, and there's a sad face because we are still lost. We're still lost and don't know the full depths. But what we understand, go ahead and click again, is that God is with us. And he came down and he watches over us. Problem is that we sometimes think of God as, this one that looks over us. And he's against us. Or maybe he doesn't care about us and he doesn't listen. Or maybe he's going to smite us down and destroy us if we do something wrong. And so there's a sad face. Let's go ahead one. And so here's God again. And click it one more time. But here's this God's holiness. We're still in our sinful state. And so we're starting to get a smiley face because we're beginning to learn, click it one more time, that God is one of us. He came to live with us. We say Emmanuel, God is for us, but clearly God is holy and God is good and God knows. What happened? There we go. God knows what is right. And so, and we start to begin to understand how he loves us and that we're in this relationship with him. Go ahead and click it one more time. And so now we're entering into this goodness and into this love and this relationship, and we see how he feels about us, and then we can trust him and be with him. Click it one more time. Because what happens is God changed us. Click it one more time. I think the halo. See, God implants, through Jesus Christ, his DNA into our lives. Isn't that great news? What's good about him comes into us. We're forgiven. We're loved. We give a whole brand new life of living that life on mission and being restored. And we begin to, click it last time, and everything is set right in the world. So now, okay, a little break here. Sonny's got these on paper. We're going to hand them out. Maybe if a couple guys. And here's your assignment while you you're getting these, something to think about, is go ahead and sometime this next week, I just want to challenge you, just redraw that out and tell it to somebody. Draw the circles and the smiley faces and all that, and share that with somebody. To practice, you might share it with your husband or wife, share it with a brother, sister, friend, somebody, a prayer partner, whatever. Just practice it once and kind of get that down. Draw that out on a napkin or a little piece of paper with somebody and practice that. Because it's the gospel message, it's a story. This is the message that caused the church to grow for the first several 100 years. To recognize how God felt about us and why he sent his son. Okay, so we'll get back to our text. So the crowd challenges Jesus that they understood that the Messiah was not going to die. They've been taught about the triumph of the Messiah, but they observed not. They obviously didn't know all the scriptures. The scriptures are very clear about Jesus, who he was, what was going to happen. Daniel chapter 9, for example, said the Messiah will be cut off. A clear allusion to his death. Isaiah 53 said that it tells of all of his suffering for humanity in a lot of detail. This is interesting. In Psalms 22, listen to what it says. A company of evildoers encircle me. They have pierced my hands and feet. I can count all my bones. They stare and they gloat over me. They divide my garments among them, and for my clothes they cast lots. What an incredibly specific prophecy, hundreds of years before Jesus ever went to the cross. And so those early believers, they didn't understand, they didn't know how the Messiah, their awaited Messiah, would end up going to not only his death, but a death on the cross. These prophecies, along with his miraculous signs, just point to one obvious single conclusion, and I think we need to revisit this over and over and over, that Jesus was the Messiah. But they're having trouble believing it, so Jesus gives them another instruction in verse 35. The light is among you for a little while longer. Walk while you have the light, lest darkness overtake you. And he's saying to them that before everything changes, prepare yourself for the coming trial. The light was only going to be with them a little bit longer. Now is a time to open their hearts. Now is a time to receive his message. Now is a time to let the light of Christ shine into them and recognize what he was doing. Make ready your soul before the storm comes. The light is here. Set your heart towards the things of God, else your joy and salvation will be taken away when darkness returns. What a challenge for all of us today. You know, in a practical application way, he's kind of saying, predetermine your decision making before you need to make the decision. I like to add these little, once in a while anyways, it's kind of fun to add a little, value to your life type comment. And this is just the way we learn how to live our life successful and well. We decide the best thing or the right thing to do before we have to make the decision. So, for example, if I wait till tomorrow morning and say, well, I'll go to the gym in the morning if I feel like it. When morning comes, I pretty much know how I feel. I am not going to want to get out of bed. I'm not going to want to get up. And so it's important for me to pack my gym bag the night before, because I'm going to decide the night before what I'm doing in the morning. And that affects other decisions, what I eat that night, what time I go to bed, to make sure I can get up and those kinds of things. So I make my decisions for my life before I actually get to it. And this is so valuable, so important in so many areas of your life. Guys, if you wait till Tuesday evening to try to pick something to do for Valentine's Day, you might be in trouble. So whatever you are going to do, maybe decide that a little bit earlier. It will help. But how true, for so many things. Getting to work on time, what you're going to do about your savings or retirement, debt, how you're going to handle all aspects of finances. It's important for relationships, for friendships, for marriage, for everything, to determine things in your life before you get to a point of decision, before it becomes important. But now, spiritually speaking, using the same idea, the same concept, Jesus is simply saying the light is here now. Don't wait for the darkness to decide. Prepare yourself while you can, while it's easy, while you have me with you. We have to make determinations in our heart as to what we will do and how we will live before the time of decision comes. If I'm not too busy today, then I think I'll spend some time reading my Bible. But when am I not too busy? If I could find a quiet place, then I'll spend some time praying. I found I have to make a quiet place before I spend time praying, because if I'm not just going to happen across those times. If I feel like going to church on Sunday, then I'll see how I feel Sunday morning. If I get a chance to show that napkin thingy to somebody that would really need it, that I'd like to show it to, if it comes up, then I will. Or you could target, you could pick, you could maybe pray about somebody in your life that might be the thing that helps the light bulb to come on as to how God really feels about His creation and what Jesus Christ has done for us. And you might keep a hold of that and think, I'm going to try to make an opportunity to share this with my friend. I'm going to take him to lunch. Or maybe we'll set up a dinner. I know we like to, we have this hobby that we share, and so the next time we go, I'm going to just sit and talk with him afterwards. I'm going to pull this out and lay it out for him. See, these spiritual things, if we wait to do them when we feel like it, without a plan, without a structure, without preparation within our heart, they just don't happen. When my life quiets down, then I'll serve God in some way. And I've watched people wait and wait and wait and wait and wait and wait and wait, and when it slows down, then it never gets there. Jesus says, while you have the light, believe in the light, that you may become sons of the light. A few weeks ago, the phone rang. There's a church member that was in crisis. That's not terribly unusual, you might imagine. And this time, what was interesting, and it was only through reflecting upon it later, I felt particularly kind of ready for this call. I felt like I was able to respond with calm. I was able to share hope and encouragement. I even felt like there might have been a dash of wisdom I was able to throw in the right spot and way. And as I reflected upon the experience later that afternoon, I noticed that morning I'd spent significant time with the Father before my day began. And I didn't know what my day was going to look like, but that particular day, it kind of worked. I was particularly spiritually strengthened before the day began. Then when the phone call came, instead of out of the chaos, but out of the presence of the Lord, I was able to respond. That is not always the way I handle those chaotic moments. And I certainly don't want to reflect otherwise. I just reflected that as in that particular time, how important, how vital it is that I am walking in the light of Christ, because I never know when that phone's going to ring again. I never know what the next knock on the door is going to bring. I never know what's going to happen on the other side of the doorway that I walk through. Every single day it's a different situation, but not because I'm a pastor. That is called life. And we all live through that. And you don't have any clue what is waiting for you around the next corner. Will you be ready for it because you have spent time with the Father? Because you've been there and you've met with Him and you have been praying and you have been reading and you've been worshiping and you've been seeking God for the strength and the help that you'll need for the day. Spending time in the light that morning just helped me for that moment to be ready. In Jesus' day, there was a great darkness that was coming. And even His disciples who'd followed Him and they walked with Him and they ate with Him and He had taught them how to do ministry and He taught them how to live their lives for God. And they were already themselves in their own right doing some amazing things and a part of some amazing things. But then when the cross came, they all scattered. When the storm hit, they all took off. The good news is that God did not omit them from His redemptive plan. And He was able to bring them back and still use them in incredible ways. But it's a reminder to all of us that darkness comes. What are you doing to seek God while you still have the daylight? And how firm are you in His presence in this moment, in this part of your life, so that when the darkness comes, you've sufficiently been with the Lord. If you wait for the crisis to be ready, you won't be.